and press this button, and now the stream is live as well. First of all, welcome everyone. Thank you for bravely coming out to LAM. Quick show of hands, who has never been before? So you're a first time. Excellent. Okay. No great shock there, because funnily enough, every single year, January is one of those times where people decide, what's my New Year's resolution? I'm going to actually engage in kink. So every single year, we always find that the January event is particularly newbie heavy. Lots of people are always shocked by that. I gave up being shocked by about year 2 because it makes a lot of sense to me. And particularly over the time that we've had since 2020, it's been a little bit shit, to put it mildly. And a lot of people have kind of gone, this enforced government lockdown and bondage is a bit shit. But you know what? The idea of it kind of floats my boat. Really fucked up and twisted, but it's one of those realities that when people face challenges, particularly when they are traumatic, you have these epiphanies, these life-changing moments. For me, it's kind of happened twice in my lifetime. In '98, I was in a car crash, and at the point of getting to the stage of realizing that I couldn't physically recover, there was a lot of mental damage in there as well. My therapist said to me, you know what, you can't go back to being who you were, so why don't you take the weekend off and decide who you want to be? So on the Friday, I came in and I was wearing a very expensive handmade Italian suit. And I came in on the Monday morning wearing a pair of new rock boots, a pair of black leather trousers, full length black leather duster, black shirt, studded belt. And he kind of looked up from his notes and went, I see you've done a little bit of thinking this weekend. What's been going on there? So we had a very candid conversation about it. And he kind of picked up the OECD classification manual that was on the shelf and went, oh, look, 58, post-traumatic stress disorder. That's what you had when you came in. 65, consensual sadomasochistic behaviour. You've gone up the scale. Now, thankfully, nowadays, 65 has been removed and we no longer run the risk of being locked up by people in coats, or white coats for our own protection. But that was the state of play in those days. You could get a knock on the door and someone could say, yeah, sorry, this kinky stuff, we don't quite agree with it, society, so come and spend some time over here until you're better again. Fuck, that made no sense to me, because to me, I wasn't very well, I decided to express my kink and I got better. Yeah. So this whole stepping back was a bit of an odd one. But to me, that was my epiphany moment. So as soon as it started to come around and I realised that there were people that were quite understandably worried for their lives, because it's one of those life-threatening situations, I realised that there were an awful lot of people who were going to suddenly decide that actually they put off their kinky deep desires for so long that it was now time to actually make a go of it. So I fully expected there to be more and more people coming out. I didn't quite realise how many there were going to be. And certainly with the live stream stuff that we did, and if anyone is new to kink, I would really recommend go back and look at what we were doing back in March of 2020, because if you're new to this and you want to absorb information, we were doing 2 workshops a week on live stream, just to kind of get people engaged and talking and to give people stuff that wasn't the Tiger Kings or wasn't that floppy-haired bullshitting bastard from number 10. But there we go. So, I sometimes get a little bit political, but that's because I've been awake for a long time. It's one of those. This lot aren't as kinky as the last Conservative lot as well. We used to have a regular guest who was quite fond of producing photos that she'd put to the papers going, look, those white lines on the table, and that's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Oops. But then again, you know what? Never walk out and leave an unpaid bill with your dominatrix. Because it's one of those, they are going to drop you in it eventually because it's not the right honourable thing to do. So anyway, back to last year. So I thought I'd give a little bit of review. it was a challenging year, and I think it was a challenging year for just about everyone in different ways. One of the ways that we addressed that challenge was we couldn't be in our normal home, which for us was very distressing because, you know what, they often only let me out about twice a month, once for Lancaster, up in Manchester, and once for London. So the rest of the time I was kept in a box and kept away from society. So not being able to be in here was very painful for us, but also very painful for those that use this as an opportunity to express themselves. Because not everyone can dress up at home, not everyone can express themselves. I never asked the question, are you here with the people you live with? Because quite often that's not the case. So it's one of those. We're very much aware that this is kind of a hub for people, and it being removed was very, very painful for us. And that's why we decided to do some of the funky outdoor events. We were set up down in a farm in Brighton a couple of times. Did anyone come to that one? Cool, excellent. Not your first event after all, you've been to other ones. But your first here, so I'll let you off. But different, wasn't it? And kind of essential, because you could see those elements where we were literally chewing our fists off because we weren't able to chat and socialise, because it's not as if I can go down my local pub and go, here, you know what? God, I've got to tell you about this. I was playing the other day, I've discovered this new lube, it's amazing for fisting. But the rest of the pub kind of aren't on board with that kind of conversation. So it's like having to put a part of yourself in a box and keep it protected. And that for a while can be sensible. We do it when we go to work, when we do it for Christmas, and when the family are around and that kind of thing. But if you have to do it for too long, it becomes painful because it starts to eat away. So the online stuff was massively important, and we kept that going as long as we could. But the key thing is actually getting out and getting people into space. So the farm, the swinger, the beer garden at the Vanilla Alternative up in Bedford, that was a great location for us. We did a couple of outdoor ones, or a couple of studio ones up in North London as well. And when we were obviously clear to get back in here, we've been back in here and keeping this moving as much as possible. So that was kind of, I think, one of the big challenges for us last year was how do we do this when we can't be in our normal home? And to me, although it was an incredibly shit year, you can kind of stop and look back at what you did with a shit hand. And actually that doing stuff outdoors, doing it at the farm, doing it wherever we could, I think gave people that hope and that connection. It certainly kept a number of our traders alive, because a year and a half of not being able to trade properly, no business can survive that. And let's face it, there were no big grants handed out to kinky whipmakers and stuff like that, because funnily enough, they weren't thinking about that group of people in the slightest. But there we go. So a challenging year, but I think we can kind of look back and say, actually, what we did, I'm really proud of. Because we rose to the challenges, we did what we could. I think we might have missed a couple of events, but they were primarily because one of our venues wasn't ready. So we booked in to go to a shopping centre in Hull. Did anyone pick up on this one? Yeah. So I've got to laugh about this one. So our host up north is a really quirky character, has got lots of different venues. He just bought a shopping centre. And to me, I thought, what a great challenge. Kinky shopping in the shopping centre. He's got an event space he's building. It's going to be perfect. Unfortunately, the locals didn't quite see it that way, and someone called in the Hull Daily Mail. So, and I laugh because it's just the most stupid thing ever. The journalist approached me under the guise that a concerned member of the local fetish community thought that the event was too high profile, so they were going to ask the Hull Daily Mail to investigate. 20-odd years I've been fetish clubbing. It's the first time I've ever heard of anyone being so concerned that they'll contact the media. And that was my opening gambit with the guy. Really? Come on, is it a game you're playing, or do you want to go for the 20th anniversary of Sophie Lancaster? because that's on Wednesday. Bit inappropriate. Or maybe we'll do a special because it's about 15, maybe 16 years since Goths on a Bus. So which one do we want to play? So we had a real hoot on that one, and he ended up having to publish about 1,500 words about the positive investment that a fetish event can bring to an economically deprived community such as Hull. But there we go. But to me, it's part of the joy of it is to look back, and most people would have been there going, oh crap, I've got a journalist tracking me down. This is going to be really unpleasant this week. We actually had to track him down because he kept avoiding my phone calls.
Is it actually going to happen?
It will happen at some stage. The venue is now open, and I've basically said once I know that it's open and stable, the next time I have a need for a northern venue, I will move it across. So we don't have a date yet, but it's definitely going to happen, as much as anything because I want another round with the whole day's mail. Because the comments section, it was pure relief from dealing with co-videos. It really was, because
it was even funnier to read as an outsider looking in.
Absolutely.
Publicity.
Oh, great publicity, because the number of people that came to the party that we held on Saturday night, oh my God, I had no clue that this was going on in Hull. It's fucking amazing. It's brilliant. And again, it gave people that opportunity to reach out and kind of go, because let's face it, if you're in Hull, there's not many opportunities you get to say to the missus, hey, look at this. There's something going on in a month or so's time. Have you? And it starts that conversation, it opens it up to people, and it means that they can start exploring things together, because that's really what this is all about. So my review of 2021 is probably going to be summarised by, fuck, that was a shit year, but I think we made the most of it. And really, I think that's all we can do in such situations, because it was not as if we could get them to make the rules up a little bit faster, or cool, to be a little bit more consistent or coherent. I don't know about you lot, I seem to be one of the only people that didn't get an invite to a Christmas party at Westminster last year. But there we go. But I think that one's going to come home, and they'll all have to suffer the party hangover at some stage this in the next or first quarter. One hopes anyway. So there we go. What else have we got on and going? For the second year, we did a Christmas message. I don't know if anyone has found it yet or joined into that one. A little bit of what's been said today, but one of the key things for us is realising that actually as a community, not everyone is into Christmas. You know what? Not everyone's into leather, not everyone's into latex, not everyone's into bondage. Fuck, Christmas is another one of those things. Not everyone's kink for a variety of reasons. So again, we're going to start doing more stuff like that. And equally, if anyone is proficient at live streaming or videoing and wants to get involved in doing stuff, please give us a shout, because at the moment, I'm the only one who's doing this. And it's a little bit of an odd one to be sitting in front of the camera and having to keep an eye on what's going on the side, because really I don't like looking at myself on the screen. It's one of those odd ones. So if anyone is interested in engaging on that level, please give us a shout. It's great fun. It's not as stressful as it appears. And we have a lot of very interesting kit for people to play with time. So we'd like someone to come on board and help us expand that. Outside of that, this session is normally occupied by the Kink Shrink, who does healthy mental practices. Has anyone not found the archive of those online?
I haven't seen.
You haven't seen it? Okay. Let me give you a quick introduction. For a long time ago, probably 7 years ago now, Debs, the Kink Shrink, approached me and said, hey, I'd like to do a workshop. Kind of a drop-in session where people can talk about anything connected with kink and psychology and relationships, and we're just going to kind of bounce it around and pick up subjects as it goes on. And we kind of thought, yeah, you know what, maybe we'll do it every couple of months or a couple of times a year. Right, okay. So normally when she's here, there is not a spare seat in the room, because they are queuing up and round, because it's a great space for people to come in. And even if it's not for you to ask a question, often someone will ask a similar question, or will open up a subject that then gives you an opportunity to either delve in and explore. If you're here with someone, then you might be sitting there going, I really hope someone brings up large butt plugs today, because that's the thing I want to talk about, but for some reason I can't. So giving those opportunities to break down some of the shame around it, to talk about the biochemistry that's involved in things, to talk about the psychology that goes into things, to talk about decent play practice, if that makes sense. Because you know what, when I came onto the scene 20 years ago, conversations were not held as openly as they are nowadays, because it was a lot more secretive, a lot more private. Christ, most of the people I knew when I first went clubbing, I couldn't even tell you what their Christian name was, because it was kept that quiet and that underground. The idea of asking someone what they did for a living, I still find it really uncomfortable, because I know that there are certain people who cannot be open about what they do because of the conditions of their employment. So notifiable professions such as doctors, nurses, anyone in healthcare, anyone in the legal and court services, anyone in the educational services. These are all people that you can lose your job because you're kinky. Now, you can lose your job. Invariably what they do nowadays is they take you to a tribunal, they leave it hanging open, they don't actually dismiss you or knock you off the professional register, and they just hope that eventually you'll go away and do something different. And the reason why they've got to that stage is we started funding people's cases to fight back. And as a result, they lost their appetite very quickly, because at the end of the day, they didn't want the next round of disciplinary to be a court of appeal, human rights appeal, and that kind of stuff, because they're on such dodgy and shaky grounds for doing it that it's only going to take someone being able to get it into court to overturn the whole thing. But thankfully, by fighting back, we've managed to stop a little bit of that. And as a result, people are a lot more open about talking about what they do nowadays, which I think is a healthy thing for the community to have moved on to. Equally, lots of opportunities in these sessions to ask questions about, oh my God, what does that term mean? What does this mean? Because if I've not been through it myself, then there is a chance that someone else in the room has. And it's that kind of space where everyone can contribute something to it. At the end of the day, I've known that I was kinky since about the age of 5. And that's when I was sitting on top of the climbing frame with a bag of sweets going, take forth and you bastards beg. Not normal child behaviour. Very much aware of this. Got to about my early teens and decided, this fascination of doing things to people in woods is going to get me into trouble, so I need to hide it for a few years. And very much kept it that way until I left home, went to university, and then, holy crap, by the end of the first week at university, I'd probably put most of the contents of the kitchen drawer inside someone. But it was just one of those. I mean, I had access to my own knives, it was great fun, a little bit dangerous admittedly, but hey, we learned. I knew that there was a kink scene out there, but certainly at the age of 18, 19, there was no way I could engage with it, because it was entirely structured through contact magazines, was very much a white middle-aged activity, and if you didn't do the time to actually get introduced into the network, there was no chance. And at my age, who was going to take me bloody seriously? Absolutely no one. It was bad enough when I was in my early 30s and I started coming out clubbing, because then it was still, the average age started about 40 and rapidly went up from there. There weren't very many young people around. Now, when you look at the community, this room is reasonably reflective, but actually, for the newbie sessions, we find that it's about 60-70% people under the age of 30. Because actually acceptance and connection into kink has become a lot more prevalent. So where it might be something that if you looked hard enough into 15, 20 years ago, someone would kind of pick up the hint from a large chain hanging off your belt, or your obsession with padlocks or something like that. And they might kind of say, you're not kinky by any chance. Nowadays, it's like, oh my God, you've got to have your favourite dom on TikTok. I mean, now, I'm not going to say that the quality of information has got exponentially better with the volume that's got out there. There's certainly a lot of stuff on TikTok that I kind of watch and go, yeah, no, please, you shouldn't be teaching breath play on uncontrolled media. Okay, because at the end of the day, that's a kind of edge activity. You need to understand that you need to learn to walk before you can run. Simple as that. And in fact, if you do stop and look back at the accidents that occur over the years, always breath play that features. And invariably it's, we were both drunk and met at a bus stop. The conversation got on to, I fucking shit you not, this is a genuine case from 2018 in Glasgow. They both met while totally inebriated, discovered they both liked breath play. She didn't make it through the night. He panicked after he'd killed her and decided to go for a walk. And now he's doing time for murder rather than manslaughter because he went for a walk. And they said, look, you clearly knew what you were doing and went for a walk to clear your head. You should have been on the phone dialing 999. Fuck, there's an accident, something's happened, this needs to be fixed. That would have been manslaughter, but the whole going for a walk to clear your head makes it murder. Okay? The reality is, he never should have engaged in it, full stop, the pair of them. Because at the end of the day, breath play is dangerous enough to begin with. If you're drunk, that's really just like kind of getting pissed and juggling with chainsaws. It's just not a good move. Okay? At the end of the day, it's a dangerous activity.
Why is it dangerous?
Because you're restricting someone's ability to
Oh,
breathe.
breath.
Yeah, yeah. Or you're choking them and you're actually stopping the blood flow to the brain. And
Yeah.
there is often someone will do a choke hold when they're intending to do breath play because the fine line between the two is absolutely minimal. And again, if you've had a few to drink or you've maybe had a disco biscuit or two, you probably can't actually make that judgment call between the two anymore. Scary. We talk about it because we want to discourage people from doing stupid shit. Why do we do that? Because we want our community to flourish. The more people that do stupid shit, the more likely we are to get shut down by the law. And funnily enough, they're not huge fans of us. Given the opportunity, they really would rather we went away. They occasionally make silly attempts to make that happen, but certainly with what we've done for the last 16 and a half years, they come after us and I'm doing them for living on and moral earnings because I pay tax. And therefore, as far as I'm concerned, you shouldn't be receiving the tax if you don't think what we're doing is legally correct. So that's my stance on it. And funnily enough, once you pay the government money, they tend to back off even if it's not vast sums of money because, quite frankly, you want to make a small fortune out of fetish? Start off with a big one. Because actually, there's an awful lot that gets involved in doing stuff like this. And it's not as if we are a £40 a ticket super club having 2,000-3,000 people come through the door. This kind of stuff covers itself. It makes enough just to keep the dungeon furniture recovered and in place and all the rest of it. But as a result, when things like a pandemic happen, we didn't have a big bank account to kind of support ourselves, and it got a little bit unpleasant there for a while. And still, it's not perfect. I mean, I would say if they put us back down into lockdown, I'm going to have to find about another 5 or 10 grand to keep this one going for another 6 months or so. But it'll happen because, oh my God, I'm not getting to the stage where I'm not going to come out of my box at least twice a month. Simple as that. I mean, heavens forbid. No. So as far as I'm concerned, we will always fight to keep this going. I forgot to mention as well, if you're not familiar with the Kink Shrink, she does the sessions for LAM, but she also does a Thursday night session at 7 o'clock. And there's usually a theme to that, so a couple of questions asked in advance. I think the record one was a 2.5-hour session on incels, the threat of involuntary celibates, which you probably think, what the hell's that got to do with our community? A fucking hell of a lot.
I have a question. Is there a recording of that session?
Yes, I can't remember the date of it, but if you have a look on the archive, I think the subject matter is
The archives of the Kink Shrink.
Yes, so she's got some writings on FetLife that have a listing of the subjects that she's been involved in, and then go to the LAM archive on YouTube and you should be able to watch it.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's an odd one because it's a term that people aren't that familiar with, but in fact when the Met rang me and said, hey, we have to give you a terrorist briefing, it was the incels they were worried about.
With good reasons, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, very much so, and because I am considered to be an uber Brad, being poly and dominant, therefore, the reason why they don't have women's to play with is that I steal them all. Yep, I know, it's a strange logic. I've tried to explain it. You know what? If you turn some of that frustration and anger and invest it in your own skill set, then you might be able to kind of have a quality life as well. But unfortunately, yes, they are the group that we are most warned about. I don't think we're at the stage yet where we'll have bollards fitted to the pavement outside to prevent them from driving. I think they have enough problems getting sat nav to work in the city on a Sunday.
Is that movement growing? Is it getting
Oh yeah.
exponentially?
Yeah. It used to be that it was far-right groups, Muslim extremist groups, and then people like the incels after. And it's now basically incels, far-right closely behind, and then the Muslims are really falling behind, unfortunately, nowadays. It's crazy, I know, but those fucking incels, they're just crazy bunch of people. For those that don't breed, there seem to be a large growing number of them. Work that one out. But there we go. And it's global. I mean, Canada seems to have a horrific problem with them. And we seem to have a growing problem over here. But there we go. I know I should take it a lot more seriously than I do, but they are invariably people that are kind of in the 5 foot to 5'6" range, and I find it very difficult to take a threat from a person that size seriously in any way, shape, or form, because it's like your arm's reach doesn't quite fit within mine. But there we go. Bless their little cotton socks. We did have an awesome retreat a couple of months ago. I don't recognise any faces other than Craig from that one and Bella from that one. We will be doing more of those. An opportunity for people to really just get out for a whole weekend. So we take over the hotel from Friday at about 4 o'clock until about 10 o'clock on the Monday morning. Although for some reason they let a bunch of Rotarians in for a meeting at 8:30 on Monday, which I did warn them. They're going to see me walking through with my huge, big bondage throne. That was fine. No problems there at all. And I think the Kink Shrink wants to do one specifically on the psychology of play. So a big discussion beforehand about negotiations, forming boundaries, getting everything done first, and then having the sessions split off into different forms of play. So a bondage scene going on, an impact scene going on, possibly some medical stuff, which is all different forms of play, and then taking the theme back out the other side and looking at the needs and aftercare of the 3 different groups. Huge potential weekend to organise. We're committed to trying to do it, but we've got to find an academic institute that are prepared to let us do it, because you need lecture theatres for that form of education, for that kind of view, so everyone can see what's going on I've got some funky kit to actually monitor people's heart rates and blood oxygen levels and all this kind of stuff. I'd like to get that projected up on the screens so that you can not only see what's going on with the people, but you can also see what's going on internally with the biochemistry, the increase in the heart rate, changes in galvanic skin responses, all of the things that after years and years of playing, you get used to setting up, get used to spotting, reading, and working with, that people don't get that opportunity to see from the start. So if we can build a scenario where we can have that together, and to me it's always going to be an academic setting because I need big lecture halls, I need all the IT and everything in place, but then we need the breakout rooms. So we can kind of put 50, 60 people into one area and get Craig to do some awesome bondage. So you can see the effect of the rope and the corseting and the subspace and the drifting that occurs and how that is completely different from an impact play scene where the endorphins are milked but through the impact level with the body, and effectively you get this, with most people, you get kind of a curve that goes up to a plateau that they arrive in. With rope, with some people, it's like
Pull it out back.
yeah, because they're almost conditioned to that so that they drop straight into that space. Other people, they need to be up in the rope and then they start to drift at that particular stage. Whereas something like needle play, where you're piercing the skin, you're mainlining those endorphins. It's not a gentle tap, rosy build up. It's a case of going straight in there. So if you're one of those junkies who likes that endorphin high, you want to be in that kind of breaking the barrier, as a marathon runner would say, then needle play and stuff like that's the fastest way to get there. So
barbed wire.
Yeah, because you want that to be massively intense. But the three different forms of play produce a different profile, if that makes sense. And that's why you get people who are massively into rope but not into spanking. You get people who are into medical play but not into rope, because it's a different experience. It's a different enjoyment. It's a different meal. It's a different type of music. It's a different atmosphere and ambience. Okay, and it's one of those that sometimes from the outside, when you look at it, particularly if you're new, it's like, oh my God, all of these things. Well, stop, look at yourself. What are you into? What have you enjoyed in the past? And that may tell you what you're likely to enjoy in the future.
Ask questions as well.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah, absolutely. And don't be afraid to try something with different people. Because this is one thing that I don't think we acknowledge as much as we should. Different people have different ways of playing. Okay, it's a different energy, it's a different connection. If you want ritualistic bondage, this is your man. If you want quick and dirty, thrown up in the air in the fastest possible time with knives rolled over your near naked body, hello! I'm your man you want to talk to. Yeah, but it's the quick and dirty, it's the getting them up fast, the high specialism. Because to me, I want to get someone off the ground and then the play starts. Whereas with a lot of people, the process of tying someone is the end point that they want to achieve. So understanding that about yourself is a key fundamental first thing, because I'm not wired by things looking neat and tidy and being perfectly positioned. That's not my bag in the slightest.
I'm a sadist, so I put twists in, so I won't make them perfect either.
Yeah, but there are lots of people out there that have to have it perfect from both perspectives, both as a top, but also as a bottom. And putting the twists in with the wrong person who has an OCD about it may give you your emotional sadistic enjoyment, but it's not necessarily going to meet their need and requirement for everything being nice and flush and neat and tidy. But there we go. But again, it's without having those conversations and understanding the difference, you won't be aware of it. So talk to people, ask as many questions as you can, because quite frankly, unless it's about my lateral flow testing conditions and the rest, there is no such thing as a silly question. Okay, simple as that. Okay, but I am running out of patience for answering COVID questions, particularly at about 12:30 on the day of an event. Because to me, it's like, you know what? Kink is also about being organised, methodical, and having that discipline in your mind. And to me, it's like, I know where I'm going to be for the rest of the month, so I know I've got all of the lateral flow testing kits I need stockpiled and ready for it. I find it a little bit alarming if you send a message to Instagram to the organiser on the day of the event after the doors have opened, asking if we're serious about bringing your lateral flow cassette.
This one's because of the pandemic going on, come on.
Well, I know there is that. I mean, yeah, it's quite shocking. It really is. But there we go.
Scary.
Go on, I'll throw a question in. What would be the best things to do if things go completely wrong when you start off in doing kink things?
Whew. Okay. If your first steps are stumbles, stop. Okay. And spend the time to work out what those fumbles were. I'll be honest, the first person that I ever played with, as in intentionally, as in, okay, you're going to come round and we're specifically going to have a kink scene, it went really fucking badly. Really badly indeed. Because what I thought we'd be communicating in terms of fun scenarios, they hadn't kind of said, no, actually, that's not what I'm into. So they arrived, I had an idea in mind, went off down a particular path, they didn't enjoy it, and it stopped very quickly. And at that stage, it's like, okay, well, what went wrong there? We had the conversations, we talked about it, rather than the, God, you're a fucking crap slave, you are. You're a broken slave, you wouldn't do that. So I didn't make any of those mistakes, which I think is fundamentally important. Okay, so stop, work out, and it might be a case of we came at it from slightly different angles. Okay, I was probably a little bit more verbal in what I was saying than she would have wanted. I think she was looking for the, oh my God, you're such an awesome good girl, and I was looking for the, you filthy, dirty fuck puppet of slut. They're in the same chapter on humiliation and verbalization, but they're very different pages. And it was just one of those. So be open and honest and stop. If you fuck up, find out why. Because if it's a mistake that you are making, you just don't want to repeat it. Because particularly in this community, a shit reputation goes round really fucking quickly. And it doesn't even have to be genuine. Oh my God, that evil Master Cosmic, he refused to give her hot chocolate and her favourite Hello Kitty subby blanket afterwards. If I didn't know beforehand, if it hadn't been disclosed and negotiated, then I didn't know that you needed it. I'm not a fucking mind reader at the end of the day. And I will always dig in and say, yeah, you know what, my bad for not asking for the 6th time, give me your precise aftercare requirements, but I'm not taking ownership for being called a monster for not having Godiva hot chocolate in the house. I'm terribly sorry, I'm non-dairy. It's of no use to me. If you'd have needed it, you should have let me know beforehand, because then I could have looked at it and gone, yeah, you know what, it's worth getting a tub of Godiva hot chocolate, or fucking hell, that's asking a lot. I'm not prepared to make that additional step. You know what? Chocolate in my house, being a non-dairy house, bang out of order. But there we go. So, if you make a mistake, stop. Don't make it any worse, and do what you can to walk it backwards.
If I may have a question, how common are such mind reading expectations? Because even in my very ordinary everyday dating experience, I keep bumping into situations where I'm literally expected to do things and say things that the other person expects. And I have been dunked into a situation where the woman I was with literally refused to tell me what she enjoys doing and what she expects us to do together.
Mm-hmm.
And I've read sex blogs where the authors, overwhelmingly female authors, had a very, very wishy-washy understanding of consent.
Mm-hmm.
And then I open a newspaper and it's like, oh, men violate consent right, left, and center. And I've been sort of trapped in this dichotomy of.
Then the answer to that is I'm going to spin it round and say something that's probably slightly controversial. For your own self-care, only go to places that you're comfortable. Okay? And by that I mean if you require someone being quite specific and quite clear with you, as in, this is what I would love you to do, and to be really enthusiastic about it, and maybe the acronym you're looking for is FRIES. Have you heard this one? Okay, FRIES, it's a consent model. The F is for freely given, okay? The R is for reversible. The I is for informed. The E is for enthusiastic, and the S is for specific, okay? So as a model, if you're playing by the FRIES model, you're not going to have no, I'm not going to tell you what I'm into, or that difficulty extracting the information, because the person's going to go, fucking hell yeah, tie me up, bend me over, fist me with a fucking sausage, okay? Because they're enthusiastic about it, okay? If you find someone who is, well, you should know you're the Dom, or every other Dom has known what to do in the past, red flag, not your cup of tea, yeah? Because they're not giving you the buy signals, the indication that are going to give you the comfort to know that it's not going to end up in a situation where you feel that you're being held responsible for someone else's piss poor communication. It's a very blunt way of putting it. You're not a mind reader. Some people are difficult and not forthcoming with the information. Take that as an indication that they're not the right person for you and move on to another. Does that make sense?
Yes, except that I asked the question and want to have a monologue. The second part is a big problem for me, because there isn't a somebody else,
Mm-hmm.
which the reason I asked a question about insults before is because I was and still am in a serious danger of being absorbed into that subculture.
Mm-hmm.
And what sort of saves me is that I have a very high opinion of myself, which insults overwhelmingly do. But when you have like 4 or 5 months between just good first dates, it's very difficult. You move on to someone. You feel like you don't have a choice of doing that.
Yep. And the counter I will give you to that is, in my 20 years of being openly kinky, I would say a total of 4 of those I had good, mutually beneficial, constructive MS relationships. So master-slave stuff. Really quite heavy, really fucking intense, really at the point of texting for permission to go to the toilet or to go from one room to the next. Really, really, really heavy stuff. That's what floats my boat. I really, really get off on that level of connection, that level of submission of a person.
I'm compromised.
And I that is such a rare gem that I could go prospecting and panning in the Thames for fucking years before I find that diamond. Now, doesn't stop me going out and having fun. Thankfully, I'm poly. So it's easy for me to look at it and say, right, the MS portion of my life, there is no one to satisfy at the moment. So that has to go into a box. And it has to go into a box because the other half of the equation isn't present. And there is nothing worse than trying to get that dynamic when it's not present. So I will put that to one side, and to some extent it becomes more precious because it's not common. So the times that I've spent with those people where it has been that total power exchange are the times that get me through the fucking shit, because I remember that I have done it and the fucking joy of doing it. I also remember the downside. Fucking 6:30 in the morning, knock on the door from human trafficking and the Met Police, but that's an entirely different story. They got the wrong end of the stick. They didn't understand the consent and the dynamics, and they took it the wrong way. But it's not something. It's not an itch that I can scratch on a daily basis because that connection is so rare. So I hear what you're saying. Yes, there is an element of some level of compromise. I've not had a primary partner in my life for the last 2.5 years. Now, going through this shit, living alone in a flat, that was fucking unpleasant. Really fucking unpleasant. But actually, it's these sessions and these connections that kept me going. Because without that discipline of having to be there at 12:30 to turn the studio on and get it all up and running, I'd have just gone off for the fucking hills and you wouldn't see me. Because all of the things I live for in life were removed, taken away.
So throw it back to them as well. I had to do it at work. I sent an email back to somebody going, I'm sorry, I'm not a mind reader, I'm a communicator, so I can get it right. Let them know that they're not being helpful in the situation.
It's one of those. It's all right. A comment's just come in from the stream from someone saying, shouldn't do drink and drugs in play anyway. I absolutely agree, particularly when it comes to drugs. Has anyone not seen the Consent is Like a Cup of Tea video? Good, brilliant, absolute must. It explains the whole principle very easily. The one thing I don't agree with in the video is it doesn't make it clear that disco biscuits are the same as being drunk. Because unfortunately, in the community, we get an awful lot of people who take a few tablets and don't quite realise that their wandering hands are not acceptable. Now, there would be people who would stand up and be consent advocates in any other situation, and they don't realise the fucking state they end up with when they have a few lines or a couple of disco biscuits, and it's just embarrassing because it's like, you've not factored it out. I'm stone cold sober. I don't drink when I come to events.
They'll also change their pain tolerance and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. But all fun and games.
So did you like consider like any like written consent like for this kind of intensive dynamics?
Ooh, yes.
Do not have someone knock at the door.
It's not going to help you when they knock at the door. Okay, because and I'm going to be very clear on that. Okay, the law in this country is due for an update. We are still basing it on the 1851 Offences Against the Persons Act, which states that you cannot consent to your own assault. So anything that's greater than trifling and transient, you can't consent to. That's any bruise, any love bite. Okay, so at the end of the day, most SM activity is technically on the wrong side of the law, but the law was written in fact 2 centuries back. So as far as I'm concerned, it's well overdue a good update. But as a result of that, there is no defence. So you can't say, but you signed up to agree to this banking. Yep, no, sorry. It's part of the dangers that we engage in. And the real difficulty is they haven't done it for about the last 10 years, but they used to find the sub and then tell the sub that they're going to be prosecuted for aiding and abetting their own assault, but they'll let them off if they dob in the dom. So this is a regular thing that used to go around. The case I'm thinking of from back in 2007, a friend of mine was phenomenally good at caning. I mean, you understand the principle of caning a 5-bar gate on someone's arse? 4 across and 1 diagonal. Okay, so this guy used to do harlequin diamond patterns on people over their entire body. And he would literally move around the person, whack, move, whack, and the whole thing would build up to a diamond pattern suit by the end of it. So as a result, people really wanted to be caned by him. So some young lady came in for a session, she thoroughly enjoyed it, she went home, her husband saw the marks, called the police, and she was threatened with dog this guy in or. And I mean, it's just an awful situation because no one anticipated that was going to happen. A very difficult one for both him and her to trust people again afterwards. So, but there we go. Sorry, thought there was a hand up in the back there.
Just going back to shaky first steps and the occasional stumble, how can you tell the difference between carelessness and genuine mistakes?
I'm going to say carelessness, genuine mistake is always a difficult one because there's a grey area. Easier to differentiate between an accident and malice. And that's how the person responds to it. So if they're not effusing and mortifying that a mistake has happened and acknowledging and accepting that and looking to correct it, then it's probably been either on the level of incompetence or it may have even been malice.
So if someone didn't accept that a mistake happened and kind of just left you to it afterwards.
Yeah, that would be a thank you, not repeating the play. Yeah. And it's awful that you have to sometimes make these decisions and judgments after the event because there was no way that you could think that that person was going to have that response because I'm sure they were giving you all of the right signals and feeding things to start off with, and it was only when that challenging moment happened.
So in that aspect, I wasn't an arsehole for walking out.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. And don't get me wrong, from both perspectives, if it's not right for you, walk out. Okay? And if someone's going, oh fucking hell, I can't believe you've just no. Yeah, big red flag. They should be saying, oh my God, what's wrong? What do we need to fix this? How can we work on this? Those are the right noises. If it's very much entitled, well, I decided we were going to do this and now you've disappointed me and rah, rah, rah. Yeah, you were thankful you didn't get down that path to start off with. Simple as that. Make sense?
Yeah.
Any final questions? Nope. I've rabbited on for the best part of an hour now, so it's time for you to all be let free into the rest of the event to get on with the kink stuff. I do apologise, we have a significant number of stalls down today because of not passing our lateral flow requirements, etc. We will be communicating with everyone a bonus that we're going to offer to make up for that as time goes on. But equally, there are draws at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock for £25 of LAMv cash to spend today to make up for the fact that there aren't as many stores as normal. Okay, any comments?
You spoke about the retreat that you're planning to do. I know now it's difficult time to plan anything, but
I'm going to hopefully do one in 2022. I don't know the date as of yet. I usually get 2 options. I either get an early one. I don't think I'm going to get it done in March of this year. It's not quite enough time. And November is the second time because it's a huge risk for anyone to give me their entire hotel for a weekend. So I can usually get it the week before the season or the week after the season. And the reason for that is the week before, if they stock up with booze and food and it doesn't doesn't all get consumed, then there's a chance that they can use a lot of it the next weekend. The week at the end of the season, we'll usually run the bar dry and stuff like that. So, thank you.
And the venue or area?
Venue at the moment. Now that's an interesting one because the last two have been down in the New Forest, but I also have a friend who owns a hotel in York. So York for the weekend might be fun. New Forest for the weekend. It's right round the corner from the Ornamental Drive. It's absolutely beautiful, and it's that. Has anyone spent any time in one of the forests? New Forest, Forest of Dean, etc. Okay, magical places. Just there is something different the moment you kind of break out of that rural environment and into the woods. Yeah. So might even end up doing both, if that makes sense, because York will be different for other reasons, but the forest has that kind of energy. And I'm not a big fucking woo-woo hippie, but at the end of the day, there are connections that we can make, and if you want to grow, being in that kind of fertile environment is absolutely essential for it. And when those hot tubs in the ground is just awesome.
Yes.
So it's one of those. I don't think I could get away with putting hot tubs on the pavement in York High School.
Have you tried?
I know there's
I'll
a lot
jump
of
in one.
people in York.
If anyone's going to get away with it, I think it might be me. But you know what? And I don't think we could get the same kind of quality of fire performer as we did outdoors. I mean, that was just when your performer enjoyed it so much the first night that she agreed to perform on the Sunday for free. It's just like, yeah.
I mean, if you ever need anybody on the set walks,
that might have to be done as well.
Do standing ovation here.
There we go. Yes, no. And again, the photos of that well worth catching because, yeah, it really was stunning
Some
stuff.
very cool toys you had.
Flaming swords and all that. So, I'm just going to end the stream at this particular stage. Obviously,